Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Shazad. Thanks, Latrice, for setting it up. First of all, thank you all for coming. This is really very important to us to be able to convene the global community in support of the vision of creating a world without vision loss from diabetes. And as you all recall, this starts for me from because it's a very highly personal problem. My wife, Mary Tyler Moore, suffered from complications of diabetes, including vision loss from her diabetic retinal disease. And I used to characterize it as, I used this picture as the last picture that I showed at last year's workshop. It's to demonstrate, Mary's joy in dance, and to remind me that a decade later, she was unable to dance across a room because of the vision loss associated with her diabetes. So diabetes stole her joy, and we're really all about restoring the joy for others. So it's highly personal. We can go, oh, I actually have a way to control this myself. It's an urgent public health concern, and our co-scientific director Jenny Sun and colleagues Julie Rosenthal and Risa Wolf have just published a viewpoint in JAMA Ophthalmology. Hopefully you've all seen it, that makes this point so clear. And that is, if you look at the Search and the Today data of youth onset diabetes, both type 1 and type 2, what they've observed is at a mean of about 12 years of disease duration, over 50% of youth onset diabetes individuals have evidence of diabetic retinal disease. And that works out to about an average mean age of about 26 years old. So these are young people who are having their first incidence of diabetic retinal disease. And that to me reinforces how critical this solving this problem is as we go forward. We've talked about this before. How have we addressed this? So we've started with mapping the cure in our first phase we call our cure platform, which tries to address three fundamental questions. How do you define the disease? You can't solve a problem you haven't well defined. You can't cure a human disease without studying the human condition. And you need to know what to measure in order to improve clinical care and accelerate drug development. So that's what we've been focusing on. So in the context of what we've been doing since last year when we all convened, our working groups have looking at updating the staging system. The 6 of them have each published in Ophthalmology Science their findings of their literature reviews, which Dr. Sun is going to talk about in more detail later in the day. We've stood up our biorepository, which Dr. Ford is going to talk about in his session. But one of the things that I wanted to point out is the technology that we have available allows us to kind of synchronize the fundus image with the OCT so that we can do stereotactic dissection of the specimens and then examine those areas of specimen, with omic analysis and otherwise. And a new technology in terms of staining techniques that we've started to develop or perfect. In these slides, what you see there, the green are vascular basement membrane, and the red are actually endothelial cells, so vascular endothelial cells. So we can see the gaps, between the basement membrane and healthy vessels, and understand better non-perfusion and other issues in diabetic retinal disease. But again, Patrice is going to talk about this in more detail. In terms of looking at it from the perspective of what we said we were going to do, last year at our workshop, what we said, what we did. So here's a few of our next steps from last year. We said that with the DRCR Retina Network as a partner, we were going to plan our first clinical trials to look at quantitative endpoints of visual function for launch. We in fact did that. We now have 2 trials that are approved by the Executive Committee of DRCR to look at the natural history of diabetic retinal disease and in a post-treatment longitudinal study that will evaluate our standard portfolio of metrics, structural metrics, systemic measures, but also add objective functional measures. And Jenny is going to talk a little bit more about this in her presentation. We said that we would organize a workshop to take a look at data standardization and harmonization. In fact, that's what we did, this last May, and we published our summaries of that workshop. We said we would explore the development of a new PRO for diabetic retinal disease, and in fact, with support from Macular Society, from Retina Society, BioCrest, the Maritime More Vision Initiative, and very substantial support, from Boehringer Ingelheim. This is now underway with Dr. Theron Jayasundara's group here at the University of Michigan. We said we would launch our first PSA with corporate sponsors to raise awareness about the importance of eye health and screening in diabetic retinal disease in people with diabetes. We, in fact, have done that. In July, we released our first PSA, which is about, the sight you say may be that of someone you love. So far, since July, the summary is, it's been aired in 183 outlets, nearly 12,000 airings, audience of nearly 90 million, with an ad value of, contributed ad value of close to $4 million, which is a pretty good outcome, especially since we just had an election. The big announcement that was on my first slide for today is we said last year that we were going to secure founding members of our MTM Vision, consortium. You may have seen in the press already today, but I'm really grateful and pleased to be able to announce that we have secured our first founding member of the MTM Vision consortium. That's Boehringer Ingelheim. In addition to this, they've also invested heavily in the development of the PRO. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to recognize Marianne Lowry, who's the global asset team leader for Boehringer Ingelheim in the retina health space, to come up and accept our gratitude and say a word or two before we proceed. So Marianne, would you mind coming up and This is really a very big thing. And I want Marianne to have the opportunity to just express, why this was important to BI, and we're really grateful for their support.
Well, thank you, Robert, and thank you to Jenny and all the members of the Mary Tyler Moore Vision Initiative. It is our pleasure to find a partner that believes so much in the long-term promise of changing how diabetic retinal diseases are treated and investing with us in solutions for people living with this condition. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And Marianne is going to lead a panel later in the day, so she'll have more time to talk about these things. Thanks, Marianne. Again, our success really depends on our bringing together, academia with industry, with government, with regulatory agencies, with other non-for-profits, and this is such an important first step in proving that we are able to do that, as are these global convenings. So we have a really tight agenda, today, with a lot of important presentations from very smart people, so smarter than me. So I really don't want to take very much more time, and I can see I'm ticking down, so that's good. But what I do want to make sure that I mentioned, that Martin mentioned, and I mentioned last night, we've set this up to be an interactive. We've brought you all here, whether you're in person or participating virtually, because we value your engagement and participation, and frankly, questioning. So please, we've set it up so that we have plenty of time for questions and for panel discussion. Please, you have my permission, as if you needed it, to confront us, to question us, to offer alternative thinking, and just to engage and reinforce the messaging that we're putting forward.